And before the museum closed to the public in March, we had all 128 of the silent art auction pieces on the walls as an exhibition, and that's by 78 artists. So you can see photos of Barb's work on the left and Larry's work on the right here, in the gallery here. And now the auction, as Adam mentioned, has been reimagined as a series of virtual events throughout June. And since we have so many excellent artists involved, we're just too happy to host programming that features their work throughout June. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what you're seeing here on the left. The painting by Barbara is Green Valley 2. It's a very enigmatic, almost ethereal landscape. It's a perfect example of her style of creating scenes that look almost idealized, like a glimpse into a utopian world, but this is actually inspired by photographs she took on her travels. And then here on the right is Larry's sculpture In Flight, which incorporates both his photography and his three-dimensional work with repurposed materials. And this wing of wood that is being anchored to the ground by concrete is actually 100-year-old barn wood. And the photograph in the circle there in the window is encased in resin. So now Barbara and Larry are here. Barbara and Larry, if you unmute yourselves, then we'll be able to hear a little bit more about you and your practice, which I'm sure you guys are much better experts on yourselves than I am. All right. Barbara and Larry, it's so great to see you. Barb, tell us a little about yourself and your work.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say welcome, and we'd like to toast you all. Thank you for coming. All right. Just take a sip.
All right.
Okay. So, first of all, I have been painting and selling my work for about 35 years. Early on, I studied the figure for about 12 years. And then I broadened. And the image that you're seeing here on the left was painted in Carmel Valley, and there was a storm coming on. And so that represents what was happening there. And then the other image, that the painting that you're seeing, Shaman. And that's part of my religious series. And yeah, just a little part of a figurative moment there.
So Barb, how did you get into painting?
Well, you know, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I found I would go to galleries, I would go to museums, and I just fell in love with the work of painting, you know? And so I traveled around in my area and found somewhere where I could learn what I needed to learn. And that's what I did.
Was that early on? Did you start out as a painter when you were just a wee child?
A wee child. Actually, a wee child in high school.
Okay, that's pretty young.
Classes, and that was good. And then I had my wonderful family, and so art went to the side. But you know, it's so sweet. My daughter reminded me, Mother, I remember you being on the phone and doodling. So what the heck?
That's so sweet. How'd you end up here in Oceanside?
We moved, Larry and I were in San Juan Capistrano, and we moved down here 17 years ago.
A better view.
Oh, what?
A better view.
A better view.
You're looking for a better view.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is another painting that we'll talk about in the other room. Yeah.
Your music series.
It's part of my music series.
I can't wait to look more into your music series. I know there's a couple of beautiful musical themed artworks we're going to look at. So Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Well, so I was lucky, or fortunate. I like to remove the word luck from my existence because I feel more fortunate than lucky. But I did discover art and photography when I was in high school, and so kind of came out of high school knowing what I wanted to do. The sculpture came a little bit later. And probably, I mean, I've been a collector of things for years. I drag stuff home all the time, and I had no idea what I would end up doing with a lot of stuff that I've had, but that's how the sculptures were kind of born, from things that I have collected over the years, and slowly transitioned into, you know, pretty exciting to work with. It's fun for me to kind of break away from sitting at the computer. Now that we've transitioned from darkroom to digital, there's a lot of sedentary time in front of the computer. So I always say it's fun to get up and go out inside and weld and pound on some metal and do some concrete stuff too, and then come back and do some photography. So it's
Can you actually do welding where you are at your current location, or do you go somewhere else to do that?
yeah, but don't
Okay, never mind. Don't answer. Don't answer.
I have a secret spot where I do that. So this is a good example of a photograph and a sculpture piece. And one of my favorite sayings I actually have borrowed from another artist, and I even have it on my website, is that I've always felt like I've been, or for many years, tried to become more diverse in my approach to art, where in the beginning I was very traditional black and white landscape, really drawn to the sort of Ansel Adams school of photography. And now things have really transitioned and morphed, and I work in projects that sometimes have nothing to do with other projects. And the quote was, sometimes I feel like my claim to obscurity or my diversity may become my claim to obscurity. So this kind of idea of having this diversity in my art is maybe not always a great sellable point, but I tell you, from a creative point, there's nothing more exciting than to keep evolving and changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about these photos.
So example of the image on the left is sort of a continuation, or say maybe a return back to my roots as a landscape photographer, although the image on the left was done digitally, but early started on with 4x5 black and white. Again, like I said, the Ansel Adams school. So it's been kind of fun to transition back there and discover, new ways of producing the same kinds of images but doing them digitally. The image on the right is actually a digital composite from a few different images all put together. The attempt is still for it to not be too far off of normal, but there is, the circle in the sky and those things, those are all added digitally.
Okay. Excellent. Well, then I would love to now start taking a peek around your space. So, Larry, I believe we're going to start with the space that you guys are in currently, right? This is what we've been calling the printer room, and I think our audience is going to see why this is the printer room pretty soon. But there's so much going on in this room. This is really your everything room.
It's about 10 by 10. It was a bedroom when we first moved in here, but I've discovered that, kind of like Francis Bacon, if people know that painter, he has this great quote about, I just love working in a room of chaos. I guess I don't mind the mess. It's my comfort zone. So right now, that's my desktop, my dual monitor setup that I use for my Photoshop, and then also doing a lot of online webinars now, and I host two nights a month. I do a photo critique night, and then also with the museum, we've kind of transitioned to doing online events now too. So our first Sundays and our quarterly critique are all done from that chair right there.
Wow. This is really where the magic happens.
So yeah, it's like every square inch of this room has something in it. This back corner has some of Barb's paintings, and a secret of mine also is I have some paintings also that I've done over the years. I don't really show them that often anymore, but we'll see.
I had no idea, Larry. Next time I'm visiting you in real life, I'm going to ask you to dig this out.
This is what I call my living scrapbook. And so everything goes on the walls in here. And then over here is the printer that actually makes this the printer room. So I got to back way up to show this whole printer.
Yeah, that baby is massive. Tell us about how big is this printer?
So it can print 44 inches wide, and then you'll see some of those boxes sitting around the printer. The material also can come on a roll. So I can print 44 inches wide by however long the roll is. And I've done a few pieces that are 10 feet wide, printed on canvas and stretched like a regular painting. The cool thing is when they get that big, it's hard to put glass or any kind of glazing over it. So you can pick materials that don't have to be glazed over.
All right, yeah.
And then I just want to, I got to go over this way too, because Katie's not going to get to be the only one to show a guitar collection behind her. So I always joke that while the printer's grinding out some prints, I'll play guitar, or when my computer's working, I'll grab a guitar and play. My story is I've been playing guitar probably longer than I've been doing art. I started like in about 6th grade. My only story is I should be better than I am, but I'm not.
Well, maybe at the end of this, we'll bring you on to test that
Oh, sure.
statement. All right. So I think, is Barb waiting out there for us?
Yes, I'll go look for Barb. She's hiding out here somewhere.
In studio land. So first we get a real quick preview of the kitchen.
Wait a minute, there she is.
There she is. All right.
Welcome to our studio.
Hello, Barb. Please
Hi.
tell us a little bit about the work you're working on.
Well, this work right here is a work that's been sold, and it's part of my contemporary work, and it's called The Dance. And she's going to live on the East Coast, so she's going to find a happy place there. So that's great. I'm very excited about that. And here we have the COVID painting. Many artists were trying to do some type of work about the COVID experience as we were isolated in our studios. And I had a very difficult time. And one of my artist friends said, oh, just paint, forget it, just do it. And I said, okay. So this represents the spring coming, the background. And then these represent the COVID. So that's what
the COVID creeping into our lives. And now, are you working from that photo that's just above the painting?
Yeah. Yes, this photo was it was a wonderful time where we were in Big Sur, and Larry did this photo up there, and it was just a fabulous time. And I thought in the beginning, well, that would be a lovely inspiration to begin with, right? Well, it went to the dark side too. So there we go. So that's what that was all about. And then over here, we have a painting that is a donation for the mainly Mozart and the art of autism. We wanted to support that because it's very dear to our hearts. And I'm going to cross.
You're good.
Okay.
Let's look really closely at this piece. Is that music actually adhered to the front of the piece?
Yes, it is. And it's Adagio by Mozart. And so it just, how it just gives life to the music, the other piano. And I borrowed a little quote from Plato, which reads, music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything.
That is so beautiful. What a beautiful artwork to donate to such a wonderful cause.
Exactly. It is such my pleasure to do that. So that's that. And let's see. Okay. So
I think we missed a painting, if I remember. It's a happy painting.
Yes,
the happy painting. Let's come back around. Look at that. Kitten remembers.
So this started out to be not quite so happy, because I was on the dark side with the COVID. And then I said, no, I have to stop and redo it. So I did. I stopped and waited for a little bit, and then I threw happy into it. So that's in process.
That's wonderful. So, okay, so you've got the dark and the light. That's really good. And I see a lot of echoes of colors. Like the background has this kind of bruisey purple, so it's like you're coming back from the dark.
Exactly. We're coming out of the dark into the light. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. So I think we're going to transfer over to Larry's point of view now, and we're going to take a look at some of his sculptural work that he's working on currently, or that he has worked on recently. Larry, take it away.
I'm here.
Here you are.
So, this is actually a pretty old piece, and I ended up giving it a title that I hadn't planned on the piece coming out the way that it did. So the title ended up being called Homage to O'Keeffe, right? I mean, how can you work with skulls and all that stuff and bones without creating some sort of homage to George O'Keeffe?
And this is a real skull. These are real bones.
Yes. So this was actually found at a swap meet. So I mean, scavenging for materials everywhere.
Right.
the story on these metal rings actually was really a kind of another round of how I got working on using the metals and metal materials. A friend of mine who actually does live next door to us now, he worked for a company that managed all of the pipeline under Long Beach to Northern California for the oil companies. He showed up one day with a bunch of these scrap pieces in the back of his truck. And I'm like, hey, what are those for? And he goes, oh, it's just scrap. It goes, gets thrown out. And I go, if it's getting thrown out, can I have some? He goes, well, sure, you can have some, but it comes with a stipulation. And I go, what is that? He says, it only travels one way. Once it's in your hands, it never comes back to mine. I said, guaranteed, I'll keep it. So I ended up with a lot of metal pieces. The base is made out of cast concrete. So this thing weighs probably about 100 pounds. So every time I move it to put it into a show, I always end up with a sore back the next day. So that's that piece. And then over here, so this is our kind of workroom, a bigger section of the workroom in this large work table. The piece I'm working on right now, you see on the table, is this piece here. Again, so we've all had some COVID inspiration. Mine actually came from talking to other artists online and some of the meetings we were having, and people talking about some of their pieces they were working on. I've had this plaster head for years, and I've tried several things that I wanted to do with it, and never came up with anything that I really liked. And then I had this piece is inspired by kind of the quote that you can see on top here. Protected by the blood of Christ is what the title of the piece is going to be. It's still not completed. I have a base that I'm still making for it. And so it came from a quote. I was watching the news kind of at the very beginning of the whole virus, or maybe even once everything had kind of peaked. And the news reporter was interviewing a lady coming out of a church and said, and she's not wearing a mask, and they had all been in the church together and nobody was worried about it. And he's like, aren't you worried about getting the virus or spreading the virus? And her response was, I am not worried at all. I am protected by the blood of Christ. And I thought, oh my gosh. And right then it hit me. I go, I got to do a piece based on what this lady, it was just blew me away. So anyhow, I ended up making the little Corona pieces. These were kind of a chore. I made about 5 or 6 different versions of them until I finally landed on, these are air dry clay that I made these out of. And again, back to sort of the found object stuff, the hand, I actually bought at somebody's garage sale. It was a series of like bathroom fixtures. One's a soap dish and one holds a towel. And so I've had these hands around forever. The base is going to end up being, you can kind of see it here. I just have a piece of foam core cut out, but it's going to be a thick dimension of a cross that will be poured with black resin that will kind of at least cover the base of the little sculptural piece of the hand and the base of the neck also. So that'll be a cast black resin pour that will go in there. So the head and the hand, everything will be fixed into that cross shape when it's all done. And I showed the piece online a little while ago, and I think it was Kurt Lightfoot asked me, he goes, oh, tell me that the halo lights up. So I've actually got it plugged in already ahead of time, so I didn't have to struggle with it. I don't know if you can see what the lights are.
Wow.
I said to Kurt, I go, the halo lights up. So,
wow, that's incredible.
And then over on the other side of the table, this sort of bonsai piece. Again, this is another piece of that metal that I get from my scrap guy. And so this piece the rock has been ground to fit the ring into the bonsai tree that's part of this rock. And so the person had seen another sculpture of mine, but said they couldn't afford it. And they said, can I commission you to do something similar? And so that's sort of in process. It's not finished yet, but it's kind of being played with at this point.
Very fun.
And then this large table on this side of the room is where I generally do all my matting and framing. So I do my own matting and framing. I do matting frame for Barb's pieces too. Also for the gallery that I have been working with for years, I do a lot of matting and stuff for them. A little bit less these days. But we have out some of these prints that we've done from some of Barb's paintings. So back to that 44-inch printer. This is some of the work that we've put out on it, or some reproductions from some of her paintings. Most of these paintings that we've reproduced have all been sold. So this is another way for her to continue selling pieces from her paintings. And also it makes it affordable. People that can't afford to buy original pieces can buy reproductions. So that's kind of, these are out for that reason. And then the rest of the room, we use the room sort of in a multi-purpose way, in that the big tables on wheels and most of the other tables we use, like over in Barb's section there, folds up and we can put it all away. And the room also then becomes a space where I teach workshops in. So before we had our stay-at-home orders, I had several workshops already planned. So this table would roll out of the way. We could bring in 4 tables and seat eight students in the room.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then up here, the screen falls down, and we use a projector to do Photoshop classes. And so I've always had this idea about, the room needed to be multifunctional. So yeah, everything's kind of on wheels, or we can fold it up and put it away.
Right. You guys are really utilizing every inch of space in this room. I see so much storage up down below, storage all along the top. And then what isn't storage is artwork, the photographs and stuff.
And materials. And, everybody loves, I got all these flat files. So on all these tables, flat files are what's underneath there. I also have a set of flat files under this big table. Yeah, you can just never have enough storage.
Right.
Constantly storing materials somewhere. And then we're going to move through here.
Yes, these are beautiful. I know, Larry, earlier you were saying, no, we're not going to talk about these, but they are so beautiful. So yeah, I'm glad we got to see these.
This is part of my ceramic work. So I've done a lot of stuff in ceramics and kind of fell into ceramics by accident. And I'll show a project on the other side of the room that kind of came out of my ceramic days up in Irvine at the Fine Arts Center. And then Barb's going to share this other piece up here of hers.
Oh, yes. More. Is this, now, would you call this part of the same series, Barb, as the piano painting, or they're just both inspired by music?
Well, my music series consisted of pianos and violins and string instruments, and I had done quite a few of them. And this one was, my friend had given me 100-year-old sheet music that belonged to her mother. And she said, here, because I used to play the organ and the piano and the violin. And so she said, I know that you're into music and art, so here you go. I said, well, thank you so much. And so I had to honor them by giving them new life. The music needed new life. So I took the music and I tinted it, and I burned part of it, and I collaged it onto my oil painting. And then in life, when my father was a young man, he played the violin. In life, when I was in the 5th grade, I played the violin. And my father has since passed, and I, many moons ago, played that violin. And the violin came to us in pieces. And we were so thrilled to have it. And Larry said, I can fix this. God bless him. So he did. He put pieces together. He ordered pieces so it would be whole again.
Why was it in pieces? And how did it end up falling apart?
I have no idea. I'm just family, just in, I'm just so thankful that we got it. Right. So we have it. So there it is.
There you go. It's a beautiful tribute.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to walk over here. Try to do it so slowly so that people don't get seasick. We're now walking past a piece of sculpture that's on our bar, which you may have seen it in the earlier things on the screen tonight. And so we're walking over here. Another painting called The Wanderer. Mm-hmm. And The Wanderer to me is very, very special. It represents our life walk on earth kind of a thing, our life passages through what life happens. And this little guy, first of all, I love the spine because it gives such strength and to the body. And I love that, he's kind of got some torn edges there, and that happens in life. But look at his little head. It's always going forward. So to me, it's just a very wonderful piece.
Yes, the face with the chin lifted looks very confident, looks like he's looking forward towards the future. So that's a beautiful message.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go, here is a sculpture piece that Larry has created. You want to talk about that, Larry?
Well, it's kind of hard to see in one shot, but again, it's just another one made from this found metal object, the iron pieces that I get from a friend. The origami pieces were added. There's a sort of the legend behind the origami pieces. If you fold, I guess it's 1,000 origami birds, your dreams will come true. So this is kind of a piece about hope, I guess, or the future, and rising up out of the split rock at the bottom.
Here's a wonderful photograph from a dear friend.
This is so precious.
I will say, so our good friend did this photograph of us, and this is basically what we do every night after dinner. We play, we play love songs, and we read poetry to each other.
Oh, enduring love. This is too much, you guys.
I know. So here's more sculpture work.
So this is that bonsai piece I told you that the other person saw. So the other one that's on the table that's in process is patterned after the same idea. This was another one of those objects. I had actually grown this bonsai tree years ago, and it died, and I was just too in love with it to throw it away. So I hauled it around with me for the longest time. And then when I started, and this might have been one of the first ones I did after I got the metal pieces from this friend. And so it ended up becoming a sculpture piece, which then just solidified the idea that nothing gets thrown away anymore.
Yes. Do you still do bonsai, Larry?
I don't do it right now. This other one here is made from a bonsai tree. So a friend of mine who just passed away this year, he had like 150 bonsai trees in his backyard. He was into it. He saw this bonsai tree. He'd come here for a workshop one time. He was a photographer also. And he saw my bonsai tree sculpture and he loved it. And he goes, if I have any dead trees, do you want them? I go, do I want them? Hell yeah, bring them over. So he nicknamed me Deadwood. He goes,
oh
my
right, gosh.
I got another tree for you. So,
and that skull, what on earth is that skull?
oh my gosh. So this is a great story. So this actually is on a rotating base. So it actually spins here. This bird actually was a bird, blue heron. You know, they're about this tall.
Oh, yeah.
Died here in the park. It was on one of the lakes. And I was at the manager's office when the manager got a call from her husband. And he says, I'm over here on such and such a lake. So where's the bird? I guess somebody called it in. And I go, where's the dead bird? And so the lady tells him. And I go, there's a dead bird? And she goes, yeah. I go, and the guy manager's name was Larry. I go, ask Larry what he's going to do with it. And so she goes, so Larry, are you alone? And he goes, yeah, why? Well, because I don't want anybody to hear this. Larry Vogel wants to know, what are you going to do with the dead bird? He goes, I'm going to bag it up and throw it away. Why? He goes, she says, I think he wants it. So that's where the skull came from, was actually from a bird that died here in the park. So
wow.
I brought him home. And the little eyeball piece is actually, that's not his real eye. That's one of those tiger
thank
eye.
goodness.
Yeah, it's a tiger eye rock we put in there. But when I saw this sculpture piece, or I mean the bonsai piece this friend brought me, it sat around for the longest time. And I go, this always just reminded me of a bird wing kind of. So it just had to become this bird. So that's
fantastic.
And Barb's going to show you these pieces back here. I definitely wanted to show them because they're very special to her.
So the piece we're looking at here is a painting that honors my father. This was during his last times of life. He had passed with Alzheimer's, and he was the rock in my life. And so to honor him, I wanted to do a painting of him, for him. And so behind there's a little watch hanging back there. And so it's, you know, like his time is running out. And he was my strength. He was my foundation. The light in the candle is dimming. The Bible behind, because he was truly a man of God. And the image where it looks like it could be a mirror or a photograph is because when one has Alzheimer's, they do tend to lose themselves. So it can be however you want it to be. A photograph or America. So that's that. And then this one up here is a painting. It's an oil of one of my co-artist students that we shared time together. And I painted this the day I heard she passed.
Oh.
So those are very special to me.
Yes.
So there we go.
That is beautiful.
And now we're going to go, I'm trying not to make you sick, into the other room. And we're going to
walk past your library, your collection of
yes,
cameras.
I see your beautiful face, Katie.
Walking back towards Larry. I know we're missing all the action over there. You don't get to look at all the books. Oh, here is the Mother Magdalene.
That's my Mother Mary painting. It was part of my religious series. And so that's one of them.
When were you working on your religious series? Is this a recent series?
No, not so recent. You know, I think maybe like 8 years ago. It comes and goes. I add to it occasionally.
Okay.
And then,
right.
you know, some sell and then I have to do more. So,
well, that's a great problem to have, right?
I know. I was having the hardest time painting this one because the hands were so difficult for me at that time.
Hands are hard.
They're
just very complicated.
I know. So I said, Larry, would you just take a photograph of my hands and so I can paint them? Or at least I can see them. Because when I'm looking at my hands from up here with my eyes, they look a lot different when they, you know,
yes.
It was difficult. So anyway, I got my hands in it. So that's it.
Good.
So now let's talk about this. Okay.
So I want to show these because these kind of came out of one of my ceramic projects. So the masks, I have one here. All right.
Oh, so, yeah?
I can actually put it on for you.
Oh, my. That's very frightening.
Okay.
I mean, beautiful and exquisite.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're so cute,
so the ceramic masks kind of came out sort of by accident. I was taking a ceramics class in Irvine. There was a lady that had an exhibition on mask building and her own masks. And she came to our ceramics class and the teacher said, well, let's everybody make a mask while she's here. And because I'm so belligerent, I'm like, I'm not interested in making masks. I'm making Black Indian pottery. I was really interested in that idea. And she goes, well, just humor me. Make a mask. And if you don't like it, then, you know, mush it up and make a pot out of it. So this isn't the first one, but one of the first masks that I made, I thought, well, I'll start off with an idea. So I made this, I said, let's go with, I'm going to go with sad. So I tried to make this sad mask. And when I got done, I'm looking at the mask and it looked very angry. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. That wasn't my intent. So I went ahead and fired the piece. And then 13 masks later, I had a whole series of masks. And so many times what happens, and I love this one, like kind of going out of my world of photography into the ceramic world. And then something like this happens and it found its way sort of back into my photographs. So I would take the masks out and onto different locations. I'd bring a canvas bag with me and take them out to different locations to photograph them. And so it became this whole series of mask images. And not until I was done did I really have some idea of what the project was about. Originally, the pieces were left untitled. And then once I kind of discovered, my project statement on it was, this was my unsuccessful attempt to define that fine line that sits between religion and spirituality. That was kind of the story. So that was kind of what the body of work became about.
I see a very familiar bird right next to this.
There he is, yes. He's inside this, he's inside that sculpture piece, yeah.
That's right.
So I was about to say, yeah, my Vogel means bird in German, so the bird's been around for quite a while in a lot of my artwork.
And the palm tree, I think you're going to have to back way up to get the actual experience of this.
This is a great example. So this came off of that big wide printer in there, right? So
yeah.
And this has been really exciting for me as a photographer, transitioning from darkroom days to digital days, where this ability, we've got so many different kinds of substrates that we can print on. And this material I found online through a company, and it's all made especially for inkjet printing. And so, in fact, this is really a collage also. The trees are one photograph, the birds another photograph, and the sunset's another photograph. So
you fooled me. I thought it was all one.
Don't be hurt by
Okay.
Yeah, no. That's the great thing about photography now is it's become a lot like a painter. I mean, in that as photographers, we have that control that we can bring anything together. We can make anything any color we want it to be. So it's been exciting to transition. If I had thought about when I was in high school, somebody said we would be able to do this, you know, so many years from now, I'd go, oh, you're dreaming. So, and over this way, just kind of quickly, I've always had, even when I was doing darkroom work, I've always had this magnetic board outside of my darkroom or in my home somewhere where I can pin up sort of work in that I'm sort of in progress or process that I'm working on, trying to work through some ideas and things and trying to figure out where I'm going with it. So I've always found it useful to have a place where I can put these images up, and then I see them every day as I walk past them. And early on this image, so this is a series of images that I'm doing. I always tell everybody, I go, they're meant to be provocative but not offensive. So how's that?
Yeah.
So the whole series is kind of plays off of a pun, an idea of what would Jesus do on his day off the cross. And so I'm kind of playing with this crucifix gesture and how many things can you think of that could go along with this? So when I created this, I decided I wanted to do this filigree page that I got out of an old Bible. And then the titles kind of were important. So in this case, this title came to me, and it's one of those things where you're sitting all alone and having a great time. I'm just laughing my head off thinking, this title is Jesus, Lord of the Rings. So
Oh my gosh. Oh, Larry.
Yes. So anyhow, I've got about 10 pieces in process right now, various stages of the way they'll all fit into the same sort of page. They'll be much larger than this. There's just kind of a piece to look at and be inspired if I want to make any change. Like a while ago, I didn't have the halo behind it, and I've added that recently, and I'm not sure if it needs to be less or more, but kind of living with that. And the last thing we'll show you in the studio here is a book that I did years ago, a book on creativity. And I've been a collector of quotes for a lot of years. And so the book is a lot of quotes that I've collected over the years, also things that I added to it. What we ended up doing for the book is it's all handmade. So Barbara and I made all these books. We made over 100 of these. We made and sold over 100 of these things. So it was definitely a labor of love. But so again, it was all printed in-house. It was all bound in-house. So we did all the work by hand. So there's this leather tie, the little Chinese coin that holds it onto the piece. This is a canvas material that actually wraps the inside of the book. And then the actual canvas material has been burned along the edge to create kind of a deckled edge on the canvas. And then inside the book, it's been hand bound or hand stitched. And we decided not to hide the stitching just because we thought it really added something to it to be able to see the stitching in the book. Oh yeah,
that's really cool.
And then there's several different papers used in the book. So one of them is this clear vellum page that we've printed this compass rose on, which kind of goes back to the title of the book, The Seeker's Journey, and then the compass here as part of the graphic for the book. So this compass rose was used as sort of a divider page at each one of the chapters. So each one of the chapters will have a photo at the front of the chapter. So I'll go this back one here. So there'll be a photo at the beginning of each chapter. There it is here also. So this was the stand that we made because we had promoted the book at a couple of art shows, and so they could buy a book and a print. So each print that was part of each chapter, I think it was 13 different chapters. So there's 13 prints, and somebody could buy the book and a print to go along with it. So then there's that vellum page. This chapter is called Art Is, which I think is always one of those great things. We're always trying to define art. I'm going to whip out my glasses so I can read this. I'll read you this quote, and then I'll read you the last quote in the book, which is my favorite quote. All right.
All right.
So at the beginning of the Art Is chapter, I've written, it says, Art is. What is art? The age-old question. Rudyard Kipling wrote, and the first rude sketch that the world had seen was a joy to his, Adam's, mighty heart, till the devil whispered behind the trees, it's pretty, but is it art? How many times have we heard that? So,
right.
So the supporting quotes that go to the back of the book, the very last one in here, and I intentionally left it in as the last quote because it's my favorite one in the book. British playwright Tom Stoppard says, what is an artist? For every 1,000 people, there's 900 doing the work, 90 doing well, 9 doing good, and 1 lucky bastard who's the artist.
Oh, that is a beautiful quote to close on.
We all hope we end up being that 1 lucky bastard one day.
Oh, totally.
All looking
Oh,
towards